this is the challenge, okay? I want you guys to make videos sharing your evolution, the evolution of your recovery, okay? How your recovery has went from where you started out to where you are right now.
Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Wildflowers Reality, and happy Friday everybody. I hope you've had a wonderful week. Hope that everyone's 4th of July was safe and fun if you do celebrate. Now, I got this idea from discovering Nicole, aka Nicole's Accountability, and I will tag her channel down below. If you guys do not already follow her, go check her out. She is incredible. But in a recent live stream that she did, she challenged people to do a video talking about how they have evolved within their recovery and just kind of breaking that down. So I thought, okay, this would be a really good video to do for my second channel. When I was in the thick of my addiction, I was not the person you see in front of you today, not even remotely. There was so much self-hatred, and like I had body dysmorphia really bad. I had a lot of shame, a lot of guilt within me, and I was just not a good person. I was a liar, I was a thief, I was a cheater, and I hurt those that I loved the most. I did things that I would have never done before my addiction, and things I would never do today that are against my moral beliefs. And I think that many of us in addiction, that happens. You lose yourself. You're not yourself at all. The peak of my addiction, I was my own worst enemy, and I was a monster. At least I felt like one. And I was so lost. I was so extremely lost. Now, the turnaround point for me is when I got pregnant with my first daughter, my second child. And that was another bit of shame and guilt that I had to live with within myself, because I always questioned, why was my son, my firstborn, not enough for me to get clean and to get on the right path and do the things that I needed to do to not only be the best version of myself, but to be the best mother I could be as well. It took me a long time to work through that guilt and that shame, but to be quite honest with you, my addiction did not have a hold of me that bad until after I had my son. So it's not an excuse, but prior to that, I would use recreationally, I would drink, I would smoke pot, I would do all these things, but it was very recreational, and I didn't have a problem putting it down when I wanted to. But after I had my son and I had a lot of medical issues, opiates grabbed a hold of my life, and let me tell you, they did not want to let go. They did not want to let go. And that's when I really lost myself. That was something I lived with, and the guilt and the shame was really what kept me so sick. It was one of my biggest things that I had to endure within my recovery, was that guilt and that shame. And that was something I had to work through, because I genuinely hated myself. That is not an understatement. I've always been my own worst enemy. Still to this day, I overthink everything. I mean, it's a huge problem, but I do so in a different way today, and I try not to put myself down so much or be so hard on myself, because it's not healthy. It's just not. When I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, it gave me a purpose outside of myself to want to get better, because that want was always in me, and I always wanted to be better. I just didn't believe I could. When I became pregnant with my daughter, it gave me a purpose outside of myself to where it wasn't an option, if that makes sense. The second I peed on that pregnancy test, all of a sudden everything became so much clearer, and there was a reason for me to really say, no, this is it, this is done. There's a living being inside of me. I gotta do right by this child, this baby. And that gave me so much more purpose. It gave me so much more motivation to want to get clean and to believe that I could. That was the beginning. And a big part of my recovery, and I think everyone's recovery, is you have to rewire your brain and your way of thinking about things. And of course, you have to change your people, your places, and your things. And I had to do all of that. I isolated myself I stopped talking to a lot of people. I stayed in the house, y'all. Stayed in the house. I didn't have a phone for the first year of my recovery. I had no way to contact people. I was not on social media, nothing. And I very much isolated myself. It had to happen, because if I hadn't have done that, I don't know if I would have had success in my recovery at that time in my life. The people I chose to associate with and the people that I had in my life only helped to keep me in a very unhealthy, toxic place within my addiction. But to be honest, once those people realized that I wasn't using anymore and my husband wasn't using anymore, they didn't want to be around anyways. So it worked out for the best. But anyways, while getting pregnant with my daughter definitely gave me more purpose and more motivation to want to go and get help and to want to be clean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. I did try to do it cold turkey to begin with, and I really struggled. And then every time I would relapse or mess up and do a little something, that only made me feel 10 times worse, because I knew this little being was inside of me, and I knew that anything I stuck in my body was going to affect that little baby, and I would feel so much guilt. So after fighting that and combating that, I had a friend who told me about Subutex, and that was something I was not familiar with. I was told that it was made for pregnant women. Allegedly, withdrawal symptoms are milder with Subutex and different things like that, and it's less of a risk for your baby. So knowing those things helped to set my mind at ease, because I already felt really bad that I was still going to have to be using a substance while pregnant. That was something that really bothered me, and I didn't want to have to take that route, but I struggled. And doing it cold turkey for me, it was just, at that point in my life, it was impossible. It was impossible for me to do. Plus, I had people in my ear that really scared me, telling me like if I did stop cold turkey, it could hurt my child. And that was another fear that I had. I got into an MAT program, and the program that I got into also offered counseling. And I have to be honest with you guys, that is really what helped me. If I had not went to a facility that also offered counseling, I don't know if I would have been as successful with it, because I had a lot of things I needed to deal with, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of demons that I had to work through. And having someone there to navigate me through that and be there to listen and give me resources really was the most life-changing part of my time in MAT and with my early recovery, for sure. What I will say is I had to go through a couple of different counselors, because you got to find one that matches you and one that you feel comfortable with. And the truth of the matter is there are a lot of people that work within MAT and things like that can still come off very judgmental or do not have any personal experience. So that makes it difficult to open up and talk to someone who doesn't understand what it feels like to be an addict. But thankfully, I finally found a good fit for me and someone who had experience. And I think that's what really changed it for me, because she had been an alcoholic for over 20 years of her life, and she had been in recovery and had not drank a drop for over a decade. So she understood. And when we started working through my issues, my eternal issues, she could relate, and that really made a difference for me when it came to talking to someone. But also, the maintenance medication really changed my life as well. Once I got on an established dose, I didn't have those cravings, and my medication was more than enough, and it didn't make me high, it didn't mess me up. Once I got on that established dose, all it did was help me to feel normal, and it helped me to be motivated and get up in the mornings and do things, and I didn't have any cravings, to not have that monkey on my back, I could work through the internal stuff and put more attention towards that. When you're in active addiction, at least for me anyways, in my experience, because I had that monkey on my back, that's all I thought about was using and getting a substance and having to have it. And my whole life revolved around getting that substance. That was it. But once that part went away, I had so much more time that I could put into really working through why I got to that place and how it got there. I'll never forget, after I had my daughter, I was so grateful. She had very, very mild withdrawal symptoms, but still, that was something that was difficult for me to even have to see her in the NICU and the wires and all of these things. And protocol, where I'm from, they have to keep the child for 7 days, whether they have any withdrawal symptoms or not. It's just protocol, because something like Subutex or methadone, it has a long shelf life, so it can take days before the withdrawal starts to come in. And that's what makes it hard for people to also get off of an MAT medication, is the fact that it does have a long shelf life, and it can be really hard, which was another thing that I experienced as well throughout my pregnancy. And even after having her, that was another thing I had to work through as well, and was very grateful for my counselor, because again, there was a lot of self-guilt, a lot of shame around the fact that I had to even have a substance to keep me off of another substance. And I beat myself to death over that, you guys. And trust me, there is nothing anyone can say in the comments section that I did not say to myself. Working through that, and again, rewiring my brain to look at it differently and not talk down to myself like that, was the hardest part, and has been the hardest part of my recovery. But I did it. And I was in a maintenance medication place for a couple of years, and the want to get off of it was there, but I was also very fearful and scared too, because this medication, you guys, it allowed me to really break free of the chains that I had on myself, and work through so much stuff, so much trauma that I didn't even know that I had, and really get to know myself, which may sound so crazy, but I didn't know who I was. I had so many different issues, identity issues. I didn't know what I liked, what I disliked, nothing. Subutex really helped me to break free of those chains. Finally got to this place of such a more healthy relationship within myself. I stopped talking down to myself, and I stopped allowing other people to push me around and take advantage of me. And I started telling myself, I deserve better. I deserve better. My morals became clearer. My sense of self became clearer. Everything just became clearer. And for the first time in a very, very, very long time, I felt like myself, and I was happy. I was happy. My relationship, you know, me and my husband became very toxic for one another. Both of us had our own demons, our own struggles, both physically and mentally. We had lost a lot of loved ones. There was a lot of grief there. Trauma, childhood trauma, the way we was raised, neglect. There's so much stuff that we had to work through. And he also got into a maintenance medication place and started working through those things, talking with a counselor, getting different resources needed. So we were on that journey of becoming better as individuals, but also as a couple and as parents. And I'm so grateful, because I've said this before, but my husband is just such a strong-willed man, and seeing him do so well and seeing him killing it in recovery really helped me to want to, because that was the first struggle, was the want. When I was in active addiction, there was a big part of me that wanted better, but then there was another part of me that didn't. And so every time I would really try to stop, the want would go away, and I'd say, screw this, I can't do it, and I would pick up again. But when we both got on a established dose that helped us and made the cravings disappear, seeing him do so well and seeing him work through his own issues and seeing him change and transform into someone completely different, not even in the most positive way, made me want that too. And it made me want to do that work, and it made me want to be the best version of myself that I could possibly be. And so we motivated each other so much. Again, I am just completely a different person today. My way of thinking is completely different. The way I look at other people is completely different. I had no morals in my addiction. I did. They were just buried deep down inside, and I didn't know how to get them back. And in my recovery, I found those again, and that was life-changing. Like, everything was so life-changing. I had got so desensitized to everything in life when I was in active addiction that it's like I couldn't feel anything. I was just so depressed and so sad and a shell of a person, and I couldn't feel anything outside of that. Just so lost. When I got in recovery, my emotions became more regulated, and I let myself cry, and I let my heart break, and I let myself be happy. I let myself be mad. I didn't hold it in. I didn't run away from it. I pushed myself through it. I ran through it, and I worked those things out. And now I'm a very emotional person, and I then was not. I kept it all in, and it ate me up alive. It ate me up alive in my addiction. But now I'm not afraid to feel, and I don't care. Like I say all the time, an emotional nutcase, but it's true. I'm not afraid to feel. I don't keep anything in anymore. That's a big part of my evolution as well. I used to keep it all in and never let anyone know how I was really feeling. Never let it show, never nothing. But now, let me tell y'all, if something bothers me, if there's something going on, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you, because I cannot keep it in. I am not going to hurt myself like that. I refuse to ever allow that to happen again. Never, ever, 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 ever. Okay? Before I was in recovery, I had no idea what boundaries were, or that I even needed boundaries, or I deserved to have boundaries. Like I said, I was a shell of a person. I didn't think I deserved anything in life. But in my recovery and in the evolution of my recovery, a big part of that has been developing boundaries for myself to stay in a healthy place, in a healthy environment, both, again, physically and mentally. And I don't allow people to cross my boundaries. And when they do, if they do, they're out, like I don't play around with that no more. I deserve people in my life who are going to and who want to respect my boundaries, because I respect other people's boundaries. I think boundaries are very important, and it's a good thing to have. Everybody should have them, and you should make your boundaries clear. That has also been a big part of my recovery. It's just, making boundaries for myself and sticking to them, not disrespecting them myself, but also not allowing other people to disrespect my boundaries either. And to, again, rewire my brain and say, you deserve better. You deserve the best. You deserve to be happy. You deserve the best. You will not settle for anything less. And that these are things that I had to constantly tell myself, because at first I didn't believe it. For a very long time, I didn't believe what I said, but I would still tell myself those things because you have to rewire your brain. And so I would just look in the mirror and I would fix my hair and I would put makeup on and make myself feel better physically, but I would look in the mirror and say, you're going to be the best version of yourself you can be today, and you deserve the best in return, and don't settle for anything less than that. My faith has been a big part of my recovery as well. It's helped me to get through. Just having faith that things are going to work out, having faith that whatever the situation is, it's going to work out as it should, and just accepting that as it is, you know, instead of dwelling on, oh my God, this is going to be the worst thing ever. I can't get through this. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And dwelling on all these negative things in my life that I cannot change. Instead, now it's like, you know what? I can't do nothing about that. I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm not going to sit here and harp and be on this negative train and like focus on all of this. It's going to work out the way it's supposed to. It's going to work out the way it should, and it always does. And just changing that as well, that mindset, instead of like focusing on the negatives all the time and the things that are so out of my control, instead of focusing on those things and focusing on the things I can change and focusing on the things that is in my power, has been life-changing. I know I keep saying life-changing, but it really has. It's been so freaking life-changing, you guys. There's a lot of things in life that we have no control over, and it's easy to dwell on those things, and it's easy to allow yourself to kind of get consumed in that, and it does affect your mental state. It just does. It affects the way you move, the way you think, the way you feel. So having faith that things are going to work out the way they should, and it is what it is, and I can't do nothing about it, and letting go of those things, letting go of it and saying, you know what, I can't do nothing. There's nothing I can do. There's so many things. I could go on and on forever, but moving on, my relationship. I'm now in a much more healthier relationship where communication is key, and trust, and hearing each other out, and both of our feelings being valid is very important. And now, granted, don't get me wrong, we still have our issues, but we work through those now instead of, you know, letting it slide, not caring enough. We work through it, we communicate, and those things are very important. Before we would not. Before we just were very toxic for one another. We both kept each other in a very toxic place. We didn't talk about anything unless it had to do with the substance we was on and how we was going to get that substance. We didn't co-parent well together. We didn't anything. We had no respect for one another. It was really bad. It was really bad. But it's hard to have respect for someone when you don't even respect yourself. So it wasn't like intentional. It's just we were both very sick, and we were both very heavy in our addictions, and we used each other. We took advantage of one another to stay sick, and that was a hard cycle to break. But within our recovery, that was a big thing that we worked on, is being a positive impact in each other's life, and instead of dragging each other down. I'm so grateful for my husband, and I'm sure he feels the same way when it comes to our recovery, because we held each other accountable. Whenever we would notice things that the other was doing, we'd say something, you know, and that helped. It helped a lot. And now when we have an issue, because all marriages have issues, all marriages go through things, and it just is what it is, that's never going to change. But now we communicate about those things instead of letting it like swell up and turn into something massive. We'll talk about it then, and we'll work through it then, and care enough to hear each other out instead of jumping straight to judgment or jumping straight to, you're the bad guy, it's your fault, everything's your fault. That's how it used to be. Well, it's your fault I stay so sick. It's your fault that we don't have money. It's your fault that we're sitting here in this situation. It's your fault. That's what we used to do, is just accuse each other and blame each other and all of these things. But now we communicate in a healthy way where it's like, okay, I feel this way. This is why I feel this way. And I want to hear what you think. We used to fight like cats and dogs. I had a lot of anger pent up for a lot of different situations and a lot of demons, as did he. Okay. But man, we were so toxic for each other. There were times where we did get physical with one another. The mental part of it was really bad too, and we would tear each other down mentally. I can't even tell you guys the last time we got in an actual fight. We bicker like any married couple, but an actual fight, no, not a thing. Even an argument, like our arguments, I call it bickering, but I can't even tell you the last time we got into a legitimate argument. Now we don't let it get there. We will talk it out and work on it before it gets to that place. It's also helped us to be better parents and to co-parent better together, you know. So I'm very grateful, you know, that we started working on ourselves as individuals, but also together. I'm very grateful, because to be honest, if one of us had chose to not to, I don't think we would be together today. I don't. And like I said, we still definitely go through issues just like any couple, but it's different now, and we respect one another. Plus we have respect for ourselves. So we're not going to settle, and we're not going to go straight to that nasty place. Instead, it's more of like we want to work together and find a resolution to things for each other, because we both deserve that and we love each other, you know. So that's another thing that has really been a huge evolution within our recovery and our relationship, and I'm very grateful for it, because there was a time where we really sucked at communication and trust and everything that makes a relationship. And today, of course, we're not perfect. We're not perfect. We're always going to be a work in progress, but we've just came really far, and we talk things out, you know, instead of keeping it in. Even if we have to take a couple days before we revisit something, like I can talk to him about something that's bothering me, and let's say it doesn't work out, the conversation doesn't go well, instead of it turning into a big blowout fight or turning into something toxic where we're screaming at each other, saying things we don't mean, things like that, now I will take a break, step away, sleep on it, give it a few days, and then revisit the conversation in a mature manner, you know. And it's just crazy. I wish you guys could have seen us 8 years ago. I really do. Granted, we were also young too, which I think plays a part, but whoo, we're different. We're very much different. These are just a few evolutions within my recovery. I will be evolving till the day I die within my recovery. And you know, I could do a whole video specifically on when I got out of MAT and the whole process of doing that. You guys let me know if you would like a video like that, because that was a process on its own, and that also really put my recovery, like, it was a test for me. It was a test. It was difficult. I've talked about it a little bit and talked about how I had to do a blind taper, because mentally knowing what milligram I was on was really difficult for me to ever get off of that medication. But if you guys would like to know a little bit more about that process, or like what I went through mentally and physically throughout that process, let me know in the comments, and I could do a whole video, a separate video on that. But that was definitely a test for my recovery. It was definitely difficult, and it was a huge process that did not happen overnight whatsoever, and I was hard on myself about that as well, but I got there. and I got there in my own time, and it doesn't matter how long it took. I got there. It really doesn't matter how long it takes you to get to where you're trying to get to. It's that you get there. Anybody going through something right now, instead of being so hard on yourself and being like, I'm never going to get there, I can't do it, I can't do it. Instead of doing that, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, because I promise you, you will get there. It just takes time, and everybody's time period is different. It just is. And once you do get there, whether it takes months or years or whatever the situation is, once you get there, I promise you, you're going to look back and be like, holy smokes, I did that. I did that. Let me know some of your evolutions. What are things that have helped you within your recovery? How have you evolved in your recovery? Let me know all the things in the comments down below. I could honestly genuinely do a part 2 and continue this conversation. So if you guys enjoyed this, let me know that in the comments too, and I can definitely dive a little bit deeper into this conversation. But for now, give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I appreciate you guys, every single one of you, so much. Until the next one, bye guys.